Welcome to the Secrets of College Planning. I'm your host, Anthony Uva, and today we're going to get some insight into college admissions. My guest today is Bryn Campbell. She is the Director of Undergraduate Admissions at Cabrini University. Welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me. I'm so glad to be here.
Yeah, so usually I start my guests where they went to college. So where'd you go to school?
Oh, well, I went to Penn State University Park. That was not where I was supposed to go, according to my father. And that was just drove onto campus, got that gut feeling, and said, this is where I'm going to college. So
Wow.
I tell people they've got to do that. You know, my father said, there's no way. And he had worked in admissions for many years and thought, you know, I know what's going to be best. And I just fell in love,
Wow.
you know. So yeah, that's where I went, and it was a great time.
So now let's just go back in high school before we get into college and what you're doing today. In high school, when did you start thinking about going to college? Was it freshman year, senior year? When did it all start for you?
Yeah, I think I'm a little bit unique. So my dad entered into the college admissions world when I was 1. And so college was always the thing. That was always what was next. And I recognize that's an extreme amount of privilege that I had, that was always the conversation, was this is what you're doing. Not that this is an option or an opportunity, but this is the plan and that's it. Right. And so, you know, exploring college is a relative term, because I feel like we were always visiting them when we were heading on vacation somewhere, you know, let's just drive by this school on our way to the beach. And so it really kind of was ingrained in me from day one. In terms of the actual search, though, I'll tell you, I waited till senior year. I really thought I was going to go where my father worked at the time, and that was it. That was what I was going to do. That's what I was told. You know, that's what tuition exchange was for at the time. And they let me apply to a few other schools, and I fell in love with Penn State, and that was not anywhere near the plan. And so, you know, it cost me a little more to go and do that, but I loved it. It was trusting my gut to do that, you know, and it was really, really important. And I'm lucky enough that even though we fought it out for a little while, you know, I can't believe you're not going to do what I've asked you to do. But, you know, we got to that point together to say, no, this is right.
Wow.
And so, you know, and really could support each other. So I'm pretty sure my father will still have it somewhere, you know, down the line, that he's going to hold that over me still just for the fun of it. But even to this day, he'll root on Penn State when they play. So we won him over.
So now you go to Penn State. What's it like?
Oh, yes. Well, that was true big college. I will say, in hindsight, I had no idea how big it was, if that makes sense. You know, you drive on this campus and it looks big and it feels big, but, you know, I had gotten to go to a couple classes with a friend and really kind of test that out and see what I liked, and it didn't feel that big because they were there to kind of walk me through. Yeah. And then I got there as a true freshman, you know, with a roommate I didn't know and a whole floor of people I didn't know and building and, you know, all of the things. And so it was overwhelming, I'll be really honest. Luckily for me, and I'll tell this to students all the time, I'm also have no problem walking up to somebody saying, hi, I'm Bryn, can you help me? You know, or I need, or where do I go for? And so for me, that worked because I was willing to just take that time and say, I need help, or I can't even find this building, where do I go? Yeah. And so that's not for everyone. That really isn't, you know? And I think that had I not been able to advocate for myself at those times, I would have probably drowned in all of that. There is so much happening, and there's so many things going on, and there's so many people around you, but that can also be very lonely if you don't know all of those people around you. Yeah. So for me, it was about finding a group of people. I had a great, you know, hall, but I also, I met my best friend who lived down that hall, which was excellent, but I also did club lacrosse while I was there. And that really gave me kind of my cohort of friends. And we got to travel together. We got to do all the activities together. It was great because we sometimes be able to take classes together. And so I found kind of my smaller community within that larger community. And that's I think, what made it successful.
So now you graduate from Penn State. How does one graduate from Penn State and end up as the director of undergraduate admissions at Cabrini University?
You know, it's funny. I think if you asked any director of admissions or anybody in admissions, did you go to college to go to admissions? I've met one person in my almost 20 years of doing this now who has said, this is what I wanted to do. And so even though, yes, it's in my bloodline, I was convinced I'm not going to do what my father did, or, that kind of attitude. And I graduated college. This is back in the days where you didn't have health insurance after you graduate college. And so my parents said, you need a job. And my dad said, there's a lot of jobs in admissions. Why don't you just get a job and figure out the rest of your life? For me, I thought I wanted to go into urban education and policy ultimately. That was my plan. I had been working with Teach for America for my 4 years at Penn State, and I thought, this is really what I'm going to do, and then I didn't get in. Wow. And that was kind of to me, the end of the world in that moment. It really wasn't. It just opened another door. And so while here I was kind of at this low point, and I was graduating in December, and what am I going to do? And this is it. I went to college for nothing, and that's not the case, right? Those skills were transferable, and so my parents said, well, you need a job. Let's try admissions. Let's see, just to get you health insurance. And I know that today's world, that sounds crazy, but back then that was important.
Sure.
And so I applied for a few jobs, took the first one I got in admissions, and haven't looked back.
Wow.
So, for me, I've done admissions. I did a few years as a school college counselor at a private independent school, and then back to admissions because I just loved it. I got lucky. I found what I loved.
So you've been at Cabrini how long?
Oh, only a year.
Wow.
I just passed the 1 year at Cabrini. I started my career at Immaculata University back when they had announced they were going co-ed. And so they were all girls at the time. And then went from there to the University of Delaware. And I loved my time there. Very, very different. So I got really good perspectives on both.
Sure.
And wanted to be back closer to home, which was just outside the Philly area. So I went to St. Joseph's University as their associate director for several years. Where, very honestly, I think the executive director of admissions that was there was just the person that showed me that this was the career. This is an option. Like, this is what you could do for the rest of your life if you want to, right?
Sure.
And find that balance for it. Well, I had a family, and so I thought, I don't know if I can do admissions. I don't know if I can travel anymore. And so I went to the high school side as a college counselor, which I loved. But it wasn't for me. It wasn't the same fulfillment I was getting in admissions. And so instead I said, you know what, I'm going to go back. I'm going to figure that out. And this opportunity was there. And
wow.
Yeah, I feel so very lucky to be there. I think Cabrini is a great place. I work with incredible people. And now we're recruiting the next class and the next class and the next class. And so
now let's get into Cabrini.
Yeah.
What is the school like? Mm-hmm. And what do you actually do as the director of admissions there?
That's a great question. So Cabrini University, we're a smaller university. So we're just shy about 1,500 students. We like small. That's who we are. That's what we do well.
Yeah.
Average class size is 14. Student-teacher ratio is 14:1. So for some students out there, this is smaller than their high school experience. Sure. And we think that's important for a lot of people. Again, we don't fit everybody, but no school does. And so we're looking for the student that is passionate about something, whatever that might be for them. We're a big social justice school, and that is what we were founded upon. We're named after our namesake, Mother Cabrini, St. Frances Xavier Cabrini. She came to the United States back in the late 1800s as this tiny woman, shorter than me, spoke only Italian, and she ultimately amassed a wealth that rivaled the Rockefellers of the time, and she used that to build 67 hospitals, orphanages, and schools across the country.
Wow.
And so we think that kind of that scrappy piece that I'm going to really make this work, I'm going to use what I've been given and help others is the biggest thing. And so that's the kind of student we think thrives at Cabrini, that you want to do something for others or take your education to do something for others in whatever way that might be.
Right.
That's a student that's going to thrive at Cabrini.
So now what's the admissions at Cabrini? How does it all work?
Yeah. So we're rolling admissions. So we opened our application August 1st, and we will continue to admit until we're full. I think sometimes that gives students some anxiety. I think deadlines give anxiety and rolling gives anxiety. So I feel the student on this. My recommendation would be just to apply and get it done. They're doing all the applications for all their other schools. Add Cabrini right on to the end, or another rolling school if they're looking at another school. But add that onto your Common App and just get it done and hit submit as you're hitting submit with your other schools on their deadlines. So it's a little less stressful, I think, if they can kind of have that deadline, but also not be pressured by that deadline at the same time. And then we are test optional. We actually were one of the first schools in Philadelphia to go test optional back in 2016. So long before the pandemic, test optional came around. And last year, 84% of our applicants were test optional. And we admitted just about the same amount. So to us, test optional really is important. We think that it's not the be-all, end-all, as I know it can be for other admissions processes, and so it's just a small part. We'd rather look at the rec letter. We'd rather look at the 4 years of the high school transcripts, and then activities and essay. We think that tells the story, and that's really who we're looking for.
So now, what type of student is the student that comes there?
Yeah.
Are they all like A students?
That's such a great question. No is the answer. And I think that's the beauty of it. Because of our small class size, we have attracted students that are your straight A students to students who maybe have struggled, had some C's in high school. Listen, I'm going to be the first one to tell you, chemistry was not my friend in high school. And I understand that we all aren't good at everything, right? And so, but if the student's going to work hard, that's what we're looking for. And so the other thing we can do is for students who maybe have learning differences or need other academic supports, we have an amazing office to help those students as well. And so we've really, I think, started to come up on students' lists when they're saying, I'm struggling or I have this learning difference, where can I find a school with this right support system? We have that. And I think that that's really important. We all learn differently, and that's okay. So, we really run the gambit of students. We're also, while still under the classification of a predominantly white institution, as an institution, we're shifting very quickly to being much more diverse. So a little over 38% of our population is students of color or BIPOC. Last year's incoming class was 54% students of color BIPOC. And we hope to only just keep increasing that. It goes back to Mother Cabrini and really bringing that diversity in, I think is so important, and understanding each other from every perspective is important. And then finally, if I may, we're the only school in Pennsylvania that is a Dream.US Foundation partner.
And what is that?
Yeah, so Dream.US is a foundation that supports undocumented students. And so by giving them additional financial aid monies. So financial aid is not the correct term, additional merit monies. A little over $8,000 each year for their 4 years in school, in addition to whatever the school is going to give. And so being that only partner in Pennsylvania makes us for some students, one of the only options if they're undocumented. It is a real struggle for those students to find a school that fits them, but then at the right price point. And so we're really proud to be able to be part of that movement to support those students. So there's, I believe, 3 in New Jersey and about 80 total partners across the U.S., but we're the only one in Pennsylvania.
Wow. So now, does the school basically filled with a lot of people from Pennsylvania, or do you get a wide variety of students from New Jersey, New York, Connecticut?
Great question. Yeah. So we are pretty heavily, I will say, regional, kind of that tri-state, but I have students from Alaska and California and Colorado and Texas. And so we really have a lot more diversity again, and I think people might realize geographically. Are we still relatively heavy to kind of this Northeast corridor? Sure. Working on increasing that, but at the fact that I've got students from Alaska, I'm really excited. So we cover more than about 35 states and a couple of countries. We had a heavier international population pre-pandemic, and we're hoping to bring more international students back now that things are, settling in. So,
So now, students that come there, they get there in August, they get there in September. Give me a year's worth of what the student is going to expect as a freshman when I get there.
Yeah. So we really start talking about what they're going to expect come May. And we do that with several summer orientation options. We have what we call our Cav Bash. It's kind of a big party in July for everybody to get to know each other. Carnival theme. We want the students to really feel like they're all one before they even arrive. They move in on campus. Usually that last week in August is typically when. I believe this should be August 25th. What I love about that, and this is something that we do that I'm not sure every school does, but we allow for early move-in, so you can move in your things early and then just show up on the official start date. And so for a lot of our families, they'll come and do like a slow move-in over the course of a few weeks. They get their key and they can move their stuff in and get their room ready all before even getting there. So there's not that, I mean, I remember that day when, we got there and it was all of a sudden, the elevators were busy or one breaks down and now you're carrying up like 5 flights of steps and
you got a whole bunch of people all going at the same time.
Yes, and that was I remember dreading those days, and so we've tried to eliminate that kind of feel and chaos and turn it into something a bit more fun, a bit more relaxed by offering that. And then we do a whole almost week's worth of activities to bring the campus together as classes are just starting to ramp up. And then we just had our Fall Fest, so often called Homecoming, we call it Fall Fest, and had a lot happening on campus, both for students, for families, for alumni, for athletics teams. So that was just this last weekend. Cabrini Day is coming up, which is a big day for us to celebrate not only our history, but also where we're going. And so that's a great day. And then several other things as we go along throughout the year. And we get to Christmas break. We all need a break. Students especially, that time to decompress. They get back in that middle of January. We go through, so we're kind of your traditional semester school, and that allows them then to go through the spring break. One of the big things for us at spring break is actually doing service trips. So a lot of schools offer this, but this is actually a very popular offering for us, that a lot of students will go and use their spring break to do some kind of missions work. And so that's always, I think, a great opportunity for students. And then the semester typically ends at the end of April, first week of May, and then there's summer. We do offer shorter summer terms if students wanted to stay on and get some classes done. But really, most of our students are out doing internships or working in the summer, and it's actually the vast majority of them are.
So now, how do you find your students? Do you have a whole bunch of admissions representatives just combing the country?
I wish, yes. No, I consider to be the best team. I'm hoping every director who walks in here says the same thing, but I have an incredible team, and they're really blanketing as much as they can. So I have a regional representative out in the Pittsburgh area. She covers kind of that little bit western side of Pennsylvania, Ohio, and up into the New England area. I have counselors in Jersey, and I've got counselors in Delaware, Maryland, Virginia. So we really kind of covered all of the coast, I should say Northeast, excuse me. And then we get these other students from other areas. Our coaches are actually really helping us recruit in these other areas as they're traveling as well. So it really is an entire school effort when it comes to the recruitment process for us.
Now, what's the requirement to get into the school? Is there a certain requirements that students need?
Yeah, it's such a great question. So we really go individually based. We are truly a holistic school, so meaning that we're reading every part of the application, understanding the context of a student. So, especially coming out of these pandemic times, these students have been through more than I think any generation has. And so really understanding the context of grades in there. For some of them, that online schooling was the worst thing that could have happened, and for some it was the best, right? And really helping understand that kind of context. Or for many of our families, we saw they were helping their families during that time, working, taking care of siblings, whatever that might be. And so again, understanding that if you're doing that, it's almost a full-time job, and somebody's asking you to go to school, your grades may not be straight A's, but you really learned and did the best you could in kind of a tough scenario. So we're looking at all of that. The one program that does have requirements that I can sit here and say, here's your minimums, is our nursing program. We have a direct entry nursing program, meaning they start right into that nursing immediately, so they don't have to come in and then hope to get into the program. They're directly entering. You have to have your 3.2 GPA. We need to have seen at minimum an Algebra 2 math class or higher. Biology, chemistry must have been taken before graduation. And then they have an additional essay to write about why they're passionate about nursing. And so that's the only one that has kind of this separate requirement. The rest, I really say, we're open to looking at everything, to understanding the context of the student, and seeing if they would be a good fit for Cabrini, because not every 4.0 is a good fit either, right? And just because maybe you have a lower grade point average, what's the why? What's the context to that? And so we really work to understand it.
Now, extracurricular activities. Does the school have extracurricular activities? You talked about coaches.
Yeah.
So I'm assuming there's sports at the school?
Absolutely, yes. So we've got 19 Division III athletics. We were the 2019 men's lacrosse champions, working on defending that title again this year. We got so close last year, so I'm really excited about this year. And actually, many championship winning teams through the AEC, our athletic conference. We are introducing, it'll soon be 20, not quite yet, but we are introducing men's volleyball for next year. So we're really excited about that. We have women's, now we'll have the men's counterpart. And so we're always looking to expand in areas where there's interest. We also have 50 clubs and organizations on campus. So again, at 1,500 students, and you've got 50 choices already.
Yeah.
And if you don't have something that we want, we are glad to help students start that. And so that is another big thing that we may not have thought of an interest area yet for students. And so let's get that started.
Wow, interesting.
Yeah.
So the big question that a lot of parents always have is money.
Absolutely.
So what does Cabrini have where parents are able to apply for, get from Cabrini? Is there something that students from in-state at Pennsylvania have compared to students out of state?
Right.
What are some of the things that parents could look for?
Yeah, such a great question. So a couple of things. Our cost is the same whether you're in-state or out of state. Our cost is also, as a private school, one of the lowest, if not the lowest, in the Philadelphia area. And that's something we're really proud of. And so I will shout that from the rooftops. I think that that's really important to understand that. And so we also then consider every application that comes through our doors for a merit-based scholarship. Those range this year between $17,000 and $22,000 each year for the 4 years. So last year's tuition was $33,650, and if you got even $20,000 last year, you're already looking at a tuition cost of $13,000. I'm not going to sit here and pretend that that's cheap for everyone. It's not. We're hoping that's the start of the affordability piece. Right. Housing on average is about $13,000. Housing with food costs is about $13,000 each year. So then, not only do we look at you for merit scholarships, we'll look at students for additional scholarships that we might have if they attend a Catholic school, a partner school. If they're going into our honors program, they can receive an additional scholarship. There's several others that we have. So we look at all of that up front, and then we do for the financial aid process. And so we encourage every family to file the FAFSA, get that done, send it to all of their schools.
No matter what.
No matter what. It does not matter what school you are. It does not matter what echelon you think you're in terms of economics. We really encourage everyone to file, truly, because it can't hurt to see if there's something there.
Right.
We participate in all state and federal aid programs in Pennsylvania. And then we look at all of that, and then if a family still gets that financial aid package and says, you know what, I'm not sure we can make that work, or we need just a little more, or there's a circumstance that's not being taken into consideration on the FAFSA, what do I do? We have this an amazing appeals process. Our director of financial aid is bound and determined to make sure that our families can ideally afford Cabrini. And we'll have those honest conversations when we can't, too.
Sure.
Where we think this isn't a good financial decision, but we really do work very hard to get that cost ideally to a point where a family could afford it. And then again, we'll have that conversation on the flip side if not.
So now, how about visits? How do students visit the school? Do they just show up one day? Do they schedule an appointment? How does it work?
Yeah. Well, while people are welcome to show up, that's always a welcomed thing. It's not always encouraged because we might not be there. That's all. So we do several Saturdays because I know often families are looking for that weekend. We do Saturdays throughout the year. We also have our open houses typically on Sundays. We're trying to meet everybody where they are, but we do have 3 visits each day, Monday through Friday. And then on select Wednesdays, we do twilight tours. So right as it's starting the sun to set, we do twilight tours. We break out the lanterns and we do these tours of campus. And we're hopeful that that also helps families who have to get in their day of work, but can still get to campus to do that as well. So we do a lot of different ways. And we also we also have an amazing virtual tour option as well that's on our website. And it's run through an app that they can do from their phone, they can do from the website, they can do wherever that is, but they can create their own tour based off their interests there. So if a family is coming from Texas and can't come see us yet, but really wants to get a good sense of us, I always recommend that as well.
So now, when students come and visit and things like that, give us a sense of what the atmosphere is, where the location is. You say Philadelphia. Is it downtown Philadelphia, or are they so far away that they still have to take a train or a bus or something?
Yeah, no, it's so great. We always say we're suburban Philadelphia, but that can mean a lot of things. And so we're 12 miles outside of Center City, Philadelphia. So we're technically outside of Philadelphia proper, but not by much. And so students would need to take a train, a car, a bus to get into the city, but we have all of those right around our campus. Gotcha. Our campus is that suburban, tree-lined, beautiful kind of old feel to it. The mansion was built in the, I believe, 1800s. Wow. And late 1800s, and so it was a family's summer home for a long time, and it had this mansion, and it had the stables and all of this land, and so the sisters were able to purchase that. And so it's got that feel to it, though, which I kind of love. I think it brings that kind of old history in, and that kind of traditional feel, but we're doing a lot of things differently and more progressively.
Fantastic. Yeah. So we're coming to the end of our show.
Yeah.
And usually I ask my guests, what advice do you want to give to the parents and the students that are watching this? Mm-hmm. What advice do you want to give them?
Oh, there's a lot of advice I would give, but I think the number one thing is this process, and the people behind it are not as scary as the media makes it seem. It feels like in the media that college admissions is impossible, you're never going to get in, and that kind of feel truly applies to a certain echelon of schools. But we were talking earlier, there's 3,600 schools in the U.S. alone, and the majority of us have a higher admit rate, that it's over 50%, that's in the 70s and 80%. That's the majority of schools. So there's so many options out there. And so, yes, you can have a dream school, you can have all that, but remember, you could have several dream schools with a strong college search piece, and not to let this be what stresses you. This is a small kind of piece in all of that. So, and to ask the admissions people, because they want to help, right? So I worked with a student, he had no intention of applying to Cabrini, but his counselor had said, I think if you just reach out to her, she'd be willing to help you. And he sent me his essays because he was just so stressed out about it. And I said, well, I'd be glad to read them and give some, critical feedback on it. And that just took that stressor off. And admissions people are willing to help, And so I think that asking for that too, we're not scary. We're not out to get anybody. We're not, sitting there and judging you on what's on your paper. We want to help. We really want every student to go to college who wants to go to college. It's truly our goal.
Well, great. Mm-hmm. Well, thank you very much for coming on.
Thank you for having me. This has been such a great conversation. I appreciate it.
Yeah, no problem. So you've been watching The Secrets of College Planning. I'm your host, Anthony. Until next time.